A British Christian doctor has been sacked by the government for believing that gender is assigned at birth. A British Christian doctor has been sacked by the Department of Work and Pensions as a disability assessor because he believes that gender is assigned at birth. Perfectly rational thing to believe. In fact, a true thing to believe. The Telegraph reported on this story and they said, the 55-year-old father of four believes sex is genetic and biological, so established at birth. He now claims his right to freedom of speech has been denied and he has been classed unfit to work for the department because of his religious convictions. And the medic from Dudley in the West Midlands fears many other professional people of faith could also be dismissed for simply holding opinions about genders that are centuries old. And that's a good point, isn't it? Because while it's terrible that this doctor, who was registered from 1989 and has spent most of his career in the accident and emergency room, helping potentially save people's lives, and that he's been deemed unfit for work over this, it's crazy, but it sets a precedent. Because now, if a Muslim doctor with the same beliefs, who will almost certainly have those same beliefs and maybe some even more conservative views, if he ends up in this situation or she ends up in this same situation, they can't be more relaxed about it. They can't be nice about it because the precedent's already set. But by the way, this idea that gender is assigned at birth or gender is just discovered at birth more accurately, it's not crazy. I'm sure you know that already, but let's talk about it. It's not crazy. Transgender people are an extreme minority across the whole world, not just the West, not just the UK, the whole world, and throughout history, because it's only in recent years that it's changed. But the difference here is, well, the reality here is, the numbers haven't changed. Really, they haven't. But propaganda has. Propaganda regarding transgenderism has been introduced. Now, the people claiming to be transgender, it's increasing all the time, but it's been static for literally thousands of years. But it's only been starting to increase in the late 20th century, early 21st century. And in fact, the early 21st century is when it really sped up. Maybe even since 2010, we're looking within the last decade. And a study of US teens not too long ago found that 3% considered themselves transgender. 3%. It doesn't sound like much, but we're talking about people who believe that they aren't the sex they were born. This is insanity. This is crazy. In an interview recently, American psychologist and family physician Dr. Leonard Sachs, he referred to his scholarly paper, How Common is Intersex? And in this paper, he explains the real numbers of transgender people in the United States. Now, I know this isn't the UK, but it still matters, and here's why. He explains that the male and female idea might not be binary, but it is bimodal. So that means that over 99.8% of the population are either male or female, with rare intersex conditions making up the rest. But he says in this paper that when you add up all the people with intersex conditions, the maximum possible estimate of people who are legitimately, truly transgender or intersex is 2 in every 10,000. So what's the most likely situation here? Is it the presence of propaganda? Or am I meant to believe that over the last 10 to 20 years, the amount of transgender people has genuinely increased because of, I don't know, biological factors? I mean, come on, the truth is obvious here. And doesn't this support the claim by Dr. Mackerath, who was sacked by the UK government, that gender is assigned at birth, at least almost every time? The response by the DWP, the Department for Work and Pensions, also backs up the idea that it is propaganda. You know why? Well, he was offered training. He was told he could undergo training to learn about transgenderism, which would have allowed him to learn the truth about people who believe they're the opposite sex, and it meant he could have carried on working for the government. This is propaganda in action. When a British Christian doctor is sacked from his position in a government department for speaking the truth and the science about gender, we know there's a real institutional problem. You know, the left might well cry about institutional racism or Islamophobia or transphobia until the cows come home. But how is it that every time we see anti-Christian, anti-science, anti-reason propaganda, it goes unchallenged? Every time. The science shows us that gender is assigned at birth, and while most people are happy to accept people who do transition from one sex to another, it isn't right that we demonize those who are brave enough to stand up for the truth. Dr. Makarov deserves our praise for standing up to his employer and standing up to the propaganda being fed to us at every level of every institution. The truth is the truth, no matter how offensive it is. If you want to see more from me and the rest of the Rebel team, remember to like and subscribe.